Hey everybody, it's Jason with Parallel Reality coming back with you today with an article from the Federalist dated September 25th entitled "The American Left is Resurrecting the Bloody Legacy of John Brown," who is this gentleman here in early photographs. Always kind of make me stop for a minute because a lot of them look very haunting, like this one. And this was probably like maybe taken 20 years or so after photography was even invented. But again, that's a whole nother thing, but really just cool too at the same time as haunting. It says, "We should take the left's invocation of John Brown seriously. It's a call to murder anyone who opposes their agenda." Wow, hiccup just popped in there. Apologies for that. We're not cutting that out, and we're going to continue on. So on the same day this week that a leftist sniper unleashed a deadly attack on an immigration and customs enforcement facility in Dallas, flyers were spotted on the campus of Georgetown University for something called the John Brown Club. The flyers quoted a phrase that Charlie Kirk's assassin, Tyler Robinson, inscribed on one of the bullets recovered from his rifle. "Hey, fascist, catch, under this." Or, I'm sorry, I was reading that as if it was part of the same sentence. We'll try it again. It says, "Under this," the flyer read, "the only political group that celebrates when Nazis die." First of all, I guarantee you Tyler Robinson couldn't tell you what fascists or Nazis are. Okay? And Charlie Kirk, of course, was neither of those things. If you know anything about his positions, you'd know that he didn't believe anything that even was close to either of those two words. And if you think he did, then you don't know anything about him. You never listened to him, and you're just an idiot, maybe. It says the flyer includes a QR code linking to a sign-up page that says, "We're building a community that's done with ceremonial resistance and strongly worded letters. If you want to make a real change in your community, let us know below." So we have like a far-left extremist group that's openly being like, "Come join us." That's a problem. It says, in the context of the ongoing wave of left-wing political terrorism in America, it's kind of like the 1970s for people who lived through that, it says this flyer for the John Brown Club should be understood as a direct call to violence. A tide of left-wing terrorism is rising in America, thanks largely to incessant incitement by Democrat politicians and aggressive propaganda from the corporate press. Yeah, the press is in on it too. The press is a huge part of the problem. Says the foot soldiers of the left are drawing on and actually resurrecting the bloody legacy of John Brown, the abolitionist who unleashed a reign of terror in the years preceding the Civil War. It's time to take the left's repeated invocations of Brown seriously, because they obviously do. It says consider what happened in Dallas on Wednesday, and of course at the time you're hearing this would have been last Wednesday. The suspected sniper, 29-year-old Joshua John, fired from a nearby rooftop at an unmarked ICE van transporting detained migrants. He killed a detainee and seriously injured two others before taking his own life as police closed in. A rifle cartridge recovered from the scene was inscribed "Anti-ICE." As of this writing, details were still emerging about John, but he apparently comes from a left-leaning family in suburban Dallas and himself was a Democrat voter whose now deleted Facebook page, because of course it was deleted, included Antifa and communist imagery. Yeah, that's a problem. Seems to be a lot of commies doing violence out there. Maybe it's just part of what they believe. Maybe communism's a major problem. So like Robinson, who also inscribed left-wing slogans on his rifle cartridges, it seems John used an older bolt-action rifle to carry out his attacks in the ICE facility, so it sounds like a copycat, or at least he was inspired by the guy who assassinated Charlie Kirk. It says 2 months ago, a major Antifa plot to ambush and kill ICE agents in Alvarado, Texas was foiled, but only after a police officer was shot in the neck. 11 left-wing extremists, members of a North Texas Antifa cell, were arrested on federal charges of terrorism and attempted murder. They were heavily armed with rifles, pistols, and body armor. Yeah, these people think they're fighting Nazis. They're not. There's no Nazis out there, folks. Hate to break it to you. Okay, if there are, they're old people in their 90s that the only people they're a danger to are the nurses who are changing their bedpans at their nursing homes that they're at. Okay? So get it out of your head. It is a fantasy that there's Nazis out there. You're killing regular people, okay? Like Charlie Kirk was a moderate, okay? If you know anything about politics at all, he was a moderate. He was not a Nazi. And if you think he was a Nazi, you're dumb. One of the suspects in that case is a man named Benjamin Song. So we're going back to the North Texas Antifa cell. A longtime Antifa agitator who was a member of something called the John Brown Gun Club, which has chapters all over the country. And I've heard of these guys before, and they are a far-left, violent extremist group, like they are Antifa. So it says, in 2019, a man named Willem Van Spronsen, who was a member of a John Brown Gun Club chapter near Seattle, was killed by authorities when he tried to blow up an ICE facility in Tacoma. I remember hearing about that. It says Van Spronsen, 69, was an avowed anarchist and member of Antifa. He sent a manifesto to friends the day before the assault on the ICE facility in which he wrote, "I am Antifa." And he was later lionized by members of the group as a martyr in a Facebook post. says, throughout history, we idolize figures like John Brown for their courage to take the ultimate stand against oppression, and today we stand strong in our support for yet another martyr in the struggle against fascism, the Post read. Well, I'm happy to break it to you guys that there's no fascism going on. How about that? It's just not a thing. And by the way, fascism, one of the hallmarks of fascism is, killing your political opponents. So you guys might want to take a look at what you're doing again here. It says, may his death serve as a call to protest and direct action, which means violence. It says, these recurring historical references to John Brown should be a wake-up call to the Trump administration and federal law enforcement agencies. Simply put, to invoke Brown is to justify and threaten political violence and terrorism. Recall that Brown fervently believed that violence, cold-blooded execution, in fact, was totally justified in the fight against slavery. It was Brown who led the infamous Potawatomi Massacre in 1856 in the Kansas Territory. The massacre was the most notable of the many violent episodes during these years that would come to be known as Bleeding Kansas. On the night of May 24th, 1856, Brown led a band of armed men, including his adult sons, to 3 different private houses known to belong to members of the pro-slavery party. They forced their way in, dragged the men of these houses out, and butchered them with broadswords. In all, 5 unarmed men were killed in cold blood that night. 3 years later, Brown launched his failed raid on the armory at Harper's Ferry. Ironically, that raid began with the killing of a free black man named Hayward Shepard, a husband and father of 5 who worked as a baggage handler at Harper's Ferry on the Baltimore and Ohio Railroad. As Brown's raiders crossed the bridge over the Potomac River, they encountered Shepard and ordered him to stop. He didn't, and they fired, fatally wounding him. That's the legacy that the American left is resurrecting and making their own. Like Brown, their ideologues who see themselves as above the law, and anyone who opposes them or gets in their way as deserving of death, or at least as expendable. And like Brown, they won't stop their reign of terror unless the duly constituted authorities stop them by force. Yeah, this is definitely a problem, and the Democrats need to tone down their rhetoric because it is a Democrat thing, and they need to tell people don't go, murder people just because you don't like what they have to say. Okay, because remember, you took out the moderate guy. You're left with the rest of us now. Okay, and we're not going to be so kind. Okay, so let me know what you think about this in the comments below. Do you think left-wing terrorism is a problem? So let me know in the comments below. Please like, share, and subscribe, and I will talk to you soon. Bye.